Hi all, welcome to another episode of Labbing It. Today we're going to take a quick look at Microsoft Certificate Services. Um, we're going to configure a two-tier public key infrastructure, so that would consist of a root certificate authority and a subordinate certificate authority. The root certificate authority is going to be in offline mode. So essentially what we're trying to achieve there is to make sure that we don't compromise the root certificate. So that's the head of the certificate chain that we're going to be creating. So that's going to be in offline mode, and then we'll have a subordinate certificate authority which will be used to issue certificates to our clients, and also as a place where CRLs can be checked. That's the certificate revocation lists can be checked. Now, I'm not a massive certificate expert in this space, but I know enough just to get things up and running, and I guess configuring certificates for particular services that I might have in my own environment. The real key purpose for this is because I really want to set up certificates for my VMware environment. So vSphere has its own certificate authority, and we can actually sign that off as a subordinate also to our certificate authority, our 2T PKI. So we'll have a nice big chain where access to, say, vCenter or ESXi is all going to be properly signed off. So communications between client and server is going to be secured. So at the moment, if I quickly show you what it looks like right now, so if we have a look in our lab, and if I try to access the vCenter, what we will get here is a not secured warning message. So this really tells us that as soon as we go ahead and enter our username and password to access the vSphere environment, we're essentially accessing it with a username and password in clear text straight up to the vCenter. So we do leave ourselves, I guess, open for some sort of attack in the middle. Now, I know it's an on-prem environment, so maybe that um, the security risk may be seemingly a lot less, but essentially, for anything that can where we can put a certificate for, especially for web services, ideally we should configure that up so that all of our communications between client and server are secured. So we'll just take a look at how we are going to set that up in our lab. So if we look at the sort of the overview picture of our current environment, so we continue to build more workloads in our labbing it environment. As you can see, we've got a bunch of what we call physical workloads at the very top there in the LAN segment called Melbourne, and we also have 3 physical ESXi servers, and that is where that's our virtualization platform for this environment. And if we just dig a little deeper, so what we have inside of our virtual environment is a virtual machine network, a VM network, and we currently have 3 virtual machines available. 2 are running, so one's a template. We've got Mel VCSA, which is our vCenter. We've got Mel DC2, which is a domain controller, and what we're going to set up now is 2 new servers, 2 new virtual machines. One called Mel Sub CA, and the other called Mel Root CA. Now they're all going to be just running Windows Server 2012 R2. I get it that it's a 10-year-old operating system, but for the purpose of the labs, in a later video, we're going to eventually migrate from 2012 up to 2016, 2019, and beyond. But for now, I just want to run it up in 2012. To be perfectly honest, setting this up, I don't think there's a lot of differences between each of the iterations of Windows Server. Probably just around the available encryptions and algorithms, ciphers, and the like are going to be a little bit different. But essentially, this will still achieve what we want to achieve for the purpose of this video. So let's just jump back into our lab and let's actually log into our vSphere environment. So we are logging in with the administrator account. And as you can see there, so we're not secured in connection, so all communications between my client and the vCenter is not secured, so it's pretty much open for anyone to view and see, including my username and password technically. Right, so there you can see our two virtual machines, our domain controller and our vCenter, and we also have a 2012 R2 template. I have actually recently just created a 2016 template, but we're not going to use that today. We're going to use the 2012 R2 template. So let's go ahead and create our servers. So we need two. So Melroot CA, going to set it up in the Melbourne data center, and set it up in our cluster. Now we don't really have to pick the node. We'll let VMware do that for us. We've got DRS enabled. So clicking next, and we just need to choose a data store. So these are our two key data stores down the bottom here. And I just want to make sure, I think the template's already in thin provision mode, but I just want to make sure that I'm using thin provisioning just to save storage. I will customize the virtual machine hardware. I just want to quickly view it. And we will power it on once it's ready. So it's only got 2 CPU and 4 gig of memory. I'll just up this to 8. This actual VM is going to be powered off anyway, so once it's all configured, the root CA will be left in powered off mode. So we don't want anyone really accessing this server once it's created. So we try and keep the root certificate nice and safe. And we go through, click next, and that will go away and start building that template. And we do need a second one. So that was the root CA, and this is going to be our subordinate, or sometimes called the intermediate certificate authority. So we'll call it mel sub CA, and this is pretty much exactly the same setup. So we'll use it into cluster. I don't know if that's the same data store or not. I think it is, but it doesn't really matter. And we'll change the memory. We'll up it to 8. 4 probably would suffice anyways. I don't think it's a real big deal. Even 1 CPU would be fine. This is just a lab environment. It's not going to be issuing out certificates and managing certificates of great quantity. And we'll let it finish there. So our root CA is up and running. So let's open up the console. And if we just go back and check what IPs we're going to give it. So 10.17 for the root CA and 10.18 for the sub CA. Okay. So just do this one slowly, just so that people can take in exactly what's going on. So with a root CA, so recommended best practice is to keep this machine off the domain. So it's just a member of the work group. We just give it an IP address. But now we will need to do some configuration. Obviously, we install certificate services on the machine and set up the certificate authority. But we also have to do some little reconfigurations of the authority because it's going to be in offline mode. We need to pass off some of the the way that certificates are going to access revocation lists and the like. So obviously it can't check this server for revocation lists because it's going to be offline. So we need to change the setting on where it's going to find the CRL for this particular authority. So we'll get into that in a few moments. What I might do, no, that's right, it's up and running. So let's quickly hit next. I'll just skip the product key for now. If you have one in your lab, obviously just enter it in. Hit accept, and we'll just a local administrator password. So this is something you might want to create nice and complex to keep it safe. I have heard Microsoft recommend that not only is it you keep this off the domain and powered off that you actually don't even have this virtual machine presented in vSphere. So once it's all created, you essentially copy all the virtual machine data files, stick it on a USB key, and lock it away in a safe or something like that, where only certain people can get access to. Um, that's how strict Microsoft wants you to be with your root certificate. But for this lab, we're definitely not going to go that far. So just the first couple of things that I quickly do is obviously just set up the IP address and an IPv4 address. Now I've already forgotten what IP I was going to give it. 10.17. Unlock on 192.168.10.17. It's in the 255 network. Gateway for my environment is 10.1. And I have two DNS servers, one physical and one virtual. 10.10 is my physical, 10.14 is my virtual. I'll just double check that. So MelDC1 and MelDC2, 10.14. Perfect. Don't need to validate it. Happy that it's going to work. Excellent. And then the next bit is just to configure the computer name. So here I'm just going to call it melrootca. And that's just a habit of mine, going straight to domain. So that's going to stay as a work group. So can't stress enough, this is actually off the domain. So we leave it as a work group, but I do want to give it a name. And then I want to enter its details into DNS. So we'll restart that now. Let's open up our DNS server. That's DHCP. Let's go into here. And here. Okay. So mel-rootca 192.168.10. Oh, I think it's 17. I'm going to keep forgetting it. 10.78. Create a pointer. And done. Now we'll get back to our PC. So this machine's now rebooted. And let's log in. Let's just fix up the picture there. That's better. Get VMware tools working. Okay, so IP address supplied, it's got a computer name, it's off the network. So this is the root CA that we are going to configure up first. So we add a role and feature. Again, if you're using a more recent version of Windows OS, I believe the setup is pretty much exactly the same. I don't think there's a lot of differences. Active Directory Certificate Services. And we just let it automatically tell us if there are any features we need to add. And for the certificate authority, for the root CA, all we want to install is the certification authority. We don't need any of the other services that are available to us. We will add some of these services on our subordinate, but for the root CA, it's just certificate authority only. I'll tick this box. I don't think the server needs a reboot, but just in case, we'll go ahead and get that going. All right, I'm just going to pause the video. This might take a couple of minutes and then I shall return. Okay, that didn't really take that long at all. So it doesn't look like we need a reboot, but we can go straight in and configure our authority. So let's go straight into here. I'm going to use the credentials that I'm logged in with, which is the local administrator account. I want to set up the authority. That's the service that I've installed. Now it's not giving us any other options here other than set up a standalone CA. That's what we're actually after. So it's a standalone root CA, and then with the subordinate, which will be domain joined, will be an enterprise CA. So standalone root CA. We'll create a new private key, so we don't have any existing keys available to us. So create a new private key. I just changed this to SHA-256 because that's the common practice. It's probably greater than that now. It's probably been a little while since I've done some certificate work for my customers, but especially setting up a new CA. SHA-256 with using the Microsoft software key storage provider of a length of 2048. Happy with that. Now, here the best practice is not to use, so this by default is trying to just using the server name, ml.rootca. So the certificate authority has a name in its own right. The recommendation is not to use or use the server name in the actual name of the authority. So what I might do, I'm not going to be too extravagant with it. I'm just going to call it JTA, JT Alliance root CA. Be done with it. I'll leave it with that. This option here about the validity of the certificate that's generated is it's up to every organization depending on how often they're going to roll their certificate authority over to a new version or do a fresh install somewhere later down the track. I mean, for the purpose of this environment, I could change this to 5 years, 20 years. It's really not going to matter. So I'm just going to put in 20 years. But something that if you're doing this in your own organization, you might want to have a think about how long you want the certificate to last for before you need to renew it or create a new CA or whatever it is that you might do. This is all good, so all the default options here is fine. So there's not really much configuration really for the root CA in order to get it up and running, that is. And we're done. So we can have a quick look now. We can jump into the certificate authority, and what you'll see here is our root CA with a nice green tick. That means everything's all set up correctly. And if we have a look at the certificate itself, so this is the root certificate. So if you look at the certification path, it is the head of a chain that actually doesn't exist just yet, but soon we're going to add a sub CA, which the sub CA certificate will live under here, and then we're going to be adding the VMware certificate authority, and well, that will be in terms of the path, and then we'll be issuing certificates to our VMware environment from there. But that is exactly how we want it. So this certificate is valid from today, 2023, 19th of September to 2043, because we set it up for 20 years. Also, a lot of people have asked me, why is our thumbprint algorithm SHA-1? I actually don't know the real definition, but it's actually not an issue at all. This has no bearing on anything. What is important is our signature hash algorithm, which is SHA-256. That's the minimum standard these days. So don't be concerned about the thumbprint algorithm. If you look at that and think, oh, I thought I set it up with SHA-256, this is not that setting. All right, so certificate authority installed on here. So let's have a look at what we need to do next. Okay, so what we'll do is let's go ahead and configure the subordinate. So we're not finished with the certificate of the root CA just yet. So let's go and open up our subordinate and set that up in a similar manner, except this will be on the domain. Skip the product key for now. The local admin account. certificates in. Okay, so let's set up the IP first. Obviously, you can probably skip through some of this stuff, but just for completeness sake, I'm going to put everything in. 10.18, 10.1, so these are the same. 10.14. Okay. Put this on the domain. So this time, so we will call it mail sub CA, and on the JT Airlines.internal domain network, asking for a password. And happy days. What I might do, this is just a habit of mine. As soon as I join the machine to the domain, before I reboot it, I usually come in here and just move it into the correct OU. So it fell in the computers container or computers folder, and I've moved it into the servers OU. Beautiful. Back to the machine, so let's let that reboot. Okay, just pause the video there while that was just quickly rebooting. Yep. Okay, so we'll just log in with the domain administrator account. I really got to fix the accounts up so that I'm not using the domain administrator account. We'll do that maybe in a upcoming video. So this machine's ready to go. So it's ready for the certificate authority to be installed. So straight into add roles and features. Again, should be pretty much the same on all iterations of Windows Server. Active Directory certificate services and features. We just leave as default. So here we're just going to add a few extra services. So we want the web enrollment option. So this allows us to enroll certificates via a web page. Certificate enrollment web service. I'm just trying to just remember which option that I'm after. After the policy web service, and I might tick actually I'm just gonna tick all these ones here. Sorry, I just paused the video, just had a tickle in my throat. Okay, some of this one might not use straight up, but just may as well install them for now. So web services needs to be installed, so that's all okay. So it's going to install all the web server features, IIS and so forth. I will tell it to restart the machine if required, and let it go ahead and install. I'll just pause the video here because this might take a little bit longer than the last installation. Okay, so we are done. Let's hit configure, and we will use the JT Airlines administrator account as the credentials. We will set up certificate authority, the web enrollment. Just trying to remember which one of these two I needed to install. Just checking my notes. Yeah, I think it's just this one for now. Okay, fine. Right, I might just leave it at those two for now. So it's an enterprise CA. It is a subordinate, so be sure to click subordinate. We don't want another root CA, so this is a subordinate. I'm going to create a new private key for this particular authority. Again, we'll set it up with 256. And here we might just change the name to JTA sub CA. So just moving it away from the name of the server. Some organizations make this really unique. That actually has nothing to do with the server name or the organization or anything like that. Just depends on how you want to go about it. Your security team might have a perspective on this. So now, because it's a subordinate, so it knows that it's going to fall under a root authority. So it's giving us a certificate request file that we are going to apply to the root CA in order for the root CA to issue a certificate to this sub CA. And we'll see that in action. There's a few little bits and pieces that's going to go on here. So it's just going to save it to our C drive, to the root of C, and that's fine. And configure. We'll open up the C. There we go. So this is a certificate request file. So we'll take this to our root CA shortly and get it signed off. First, we've got a little bit of configuration to do. So just telling us here, we've got a warning because technically this CA is not configured yet. It's not set up because it's not signed off by our root CA. That's okay. I'm going to select no for now. I won't worry about the other services for the time being. So if we come in here and we open up the certificate authority, and unlike the root CA where we've got a nice little green tick, here we've got, I assume is like a stop, but essentially it's not running. And if we tried to start it, it's not going to be happy with us. You want to install a root certificate. I actually don't have one at the moment ready to go. So let's start the configuration. So we need to just pop back into our root CA now. And we are coming into the properties of the certificate authority. No, actually we're not going to. Are we? Hang on. Oh yes, no, we are going in here. So in the properties of the root certificate authority, so that was just a right mouse click, properties, and under extensions is where we're going to go. And here we're just going to configure up two extension settings, so for CDP and AIA. So there's a bit of information about this, but essentially what we're setting up here is the distribution point for where we should check the CRL for this certificate authority. And at the moment, by default, there are some locations here that have been pre-configured. But because this server is actually going to be offline, when a certificate or when someone wants to check the CRL for this particular certificate, it's going to fail because it's going to, by default, it's got here server DNS name. Server DNS name is mel-root CA. Mel-root CA is going to be offline. So this is not going to work for us. So we need to change these out a little bit. And for the authority information access, the AIA, so this is basically giving the information to the certificate on where to find details regarding the issuer of the certificate. So again, this server is the issuer of this certificate, so this certificate is going to be offline, so we need to provide a different location for that information, and that location is going to be our subordinate. So that's essentially what we're going to be setting up here. So let's do this slowly because this needs to be done correctly the first time, really. So let's start with, we start with the AIA. Let's start with the CDP. So at the moment we've got 4 locations, and when we publish the information, we are publishing CRLs to this location, publishing Delta CRLs to this location. So what we want to do is we'll remove a couple of these out because we don't actually really need them. So let's mark, so we don't want this one. We do want to use HTTP, but we don't want to use this location because this location is not going to exist. So remove HTTP. We'll remove file, and I don't think we need to keep LDAP. Include all the CRLs. Yes, we want this option, and we want to include the CDP extensions of issued certificates. So that's the option for these two. And we do still want to use HTTP as a location of where to find the CDP. So let's add, and so this is pretty standard. This is the standard setting for most certificate authorities. So we are going to put in mel sub CA because that's where we're going to find the CRL, and it's going to exist in this share on the sub CA. And I'm just following a set of instructions, and I'll leave these instructions on video in the information below. So insert CA name, and then also the CRL name suffix, and the Delta CRL allowed. Just going to double check that, make sure that I've got that right. I believe it is correct, and we put the CRL extension. That looks good to me. I'm just double checking my notes. CA name, CRL name, suffix, and then a Delta CRL allowed. Okay. Click OK. That's pretty much all I need. That looks fine. And I believe I take this option and this option. Perfect. Okay, so pretty much the same, kind of a similar setting to our AIA configuration. So we want to remove HTTP, and we want to remove file, and for LDAP we want to make sure that this is ticked. We don't need to change anything for this location, and then we just add the HTTP. So this is just slightly different, but so that's all the same. But here we are going to add the server DNS name, insert, then an underscore, then the CA name, insert, and the certificate name. Again, this is quite standard, so if you look this up on various blogs and so forth, this is pretty much the exact same thing that they're suggesting to use. And .crt certificate, and okay, and we tick this option as well. And we can, I think now we can hit OK, and I think we need to restart the services. We do, so let's do that. Okay, next bit. So we'll just configure the CRL publication interval. So if we right mouse click on revoke certificates and head down to properties, currently see the CRL publication interval of 1 week. So every week this server is going to attempt to publish the CRL. Now this server is going to be offline, so it's not going to really publish anything. But what it's saying here is that our CRL will expire as well. So when we are checking for the validity of a certificate, if the CRL has expired, then that's going to cause some issues as well. So if we look at the current CRL, so at the creation of the certificate, this root certificate, it says that the expiration date will be the 27th. So what's that, 8 days from now? So what we're going to do is change this to, say, 6 months maybe. So what this will probably mean is that we'll need to power this root CA on. So we might set a reminder that in 6 months time we need to update the CRL. So we'll turn the server on and publish a new CRL and copy that down to our subordinate. We'll see exactly what that means very shortly. But for now, I'm just going to leave it at 6 months. You might set it at 12. It really depends. You might do it at 1 month. If you've got a team of people that are just managing certificates, for instance, you could do this a lot differently. But just for the purpose of this environment, we're going to set it at 6 months, and we are not going to publish any Delta CRLs. The server's going to be offline. There's no point doing Delta CRL. So Delta CRL is essentially is a change. It's a new CRL based on the changes since the previous CRL. So if you're a massive environment with thousands of certificates being issued, Delta CRLs might be a good way to go. Our environment's not going to be anywhere near that, and therefore I'm not going to be using it. It's an offline root CA, so we wouldn't use that anyways. Okay, so I'll hit OK, and that is done. So the next thing I'm going to do is just set up or configure the validity period of issued certificates from this server. So this server really is only going to issue one certificate, and that's to the subordinate CA, and it shouldn't really issue anything else. But when we do issue that certificate, we want to issue it for, say, 10 years. So this certificate is going to last for 20. Our subordinate CA, our intermediate CAs, we're going to set it up for, say, 10 years. The easiest way to do that, I think you can do that through the registry, but I just often just come in here and configure it through the command line. Just use the cert util command, set reg CA validity period. You just set the unit value first, so we want to set it to 10, and set util set reg, and then we just set what type of period is it. 10 days, 10 weeks, 10 years, validity period 2 years. So when this authority issues out a certificate, it's going to be issued out at 10 years. And we'll have a look at those details also once we actually get this up and running. So the next bit we just need to do, so this is the root CA, and the root CA obviously doesn't have any knowledge of our Active Directory environment. It's the server's off the network. It wasn't configured with Active Directory, so we need to just provide it some information about where Active Directory is. So this is a standard requirement when setting up an offline root CA. So again, it's just a cert util registry fix. So ds config dn and cn equals configuration, dc equals, so in my case it's JT Airlines, dc equals internal. Close quotation marks. Just double check my notes, make sure that that is definitely correct, because this is something that we can't make a mistake with right now. Yep, that looks good. And then there's just one more configuration. Cert util set reg ca ds domain dn dc equals jt airlines dc equals internal. The quotation marks. And that should be it. Completed successfully. Beautiful. So what we might do now, I don't think I need the command prompt anymore, so just pop in here and we'll just restart the certificate service. So just get those changes into effect. Good. And now we just want to publish the CRL. So, sorry, publish our certificates. Let's have a look here. Publish our CRL, publish new CRL, issue a complete CRL. That's great. And I believe then we pop into directory now, and by default, because that's the setting given or applied to the certificate authority, if we go into is it system 32 cert serve cert enroll, and that's what we just published there. There's the CRL. So there's the root certificate, which automatically is placed there when we created the CA, and now we have published a CRL. And if we come back into here and under properties, we now have a new CRL in effect, and it's effective from a short while ago. Now for the next, I believe 6 months is what we set it for. So that's really good. So what we want to do is probably a week or two prior to this expiration date, we probably want to power back up this root CA and publish another CRL. And then what we actually do is copy the CRL to our subordinate, because that's where the certificate's going to look for it. That's the settings that we configured in the CDP setup. Right. So next thing to do is we actually need these two files on our subordinate now. So I'll just copy those and start up another. Yeah. Not sure if actually I'm going to be able to get to our. Actually, we should do because of the same account. Well, subca cert enroll. Beautiful. So we'll punch that's our root certificate and our CRL for this certificate authority, now located on our subordinate CA. So coming over here, our sub CA, cert enroll. Now we can see those two files have been copied here. Right, so the last thing we need to do is publish the root certificate and the CRL into Active Directory. So it's just a quick couple of lines. Actually, I'd like to go into the folder, cert enroll. So I see those certificate there and the CRL there. So cert util ds publish -f, and it's the CRT file. So I just tap that out and give it the command that's root CA, completed successfully. So that's the root certificate published to AD, and then the next thing is to publish the CRL, and It's just called JTA rootca.crl. And that's published successfully as well, which is good. One thing I like to do now is to just pop onto our domain controller and go to our group policy. So just to ensure that every domain joined machine picks up that root certificate. Default domain policy. Now I'm not sure if you actually really need to do this. I've just seen some articles suggest that you do it and others that you don't. So in my case, I'm just going to edit my default domain policy. And I've just got to remember where to put that. I think it's here. No, it's in security settings somewhere. Here we go. Security settings. Band that out. And down to public key policies, trusted root certificate authorities. And here we don't have anything. So what I can do here is just go import and I browse to my subca, mel subca into the cert enroll folder. And here I see the root certificate. I'll just publish that into group policy as well. And done. So I think what will happen here, so if I just jump back up into this machine, for instance, and we were to open up computer certificates, and we have a look at the trusted root authorities that's here on this server. Here you can't see anything related to PKI. So these are just a bunch of external trusted certificates that's been applied through Windows updates, for instance. Now, if I were to run a GP update force, and if I try that again, GP update force, updating policy, and I probably just need to do a refresh. There we go. And now we see the root certificate in here. So it's come in twice. So this, I'm going to only assume that because I've published it into Active Directory, it was going in here anyways. The fact that now I've also applied it to group policy, it's in here as well, but that's not going to hurt anything. They're exactly the same certificate. Just check your own environment. You might not need to put it into group policy. Maybe you could have done a GP update force before adding it into group policy and just see if it was coming down, if it comes down automatically from publishing it to Active Directory. That's probably my inexperience a little bit here with certificate services and how it all works in the back end. But anyways, nonetheless, we'll move on. So we need to now, so on this CA server, the subca server, we have that request file. So I'm going to just jump into the root CA, and I'm going to see if I can get to the $C here. There we can. I just actually no, I don't need to. I won't copy it across. I think all I'll do is open up the certificate authority and open this up. Let's go remember here, all tasks, submit a new request to this server, and now it's going to ask for the subordinate, the subca request file. So CA $, and here we have it here. And we just click open. And what that will do is go into a pending request. So here's the pending request. And we can just go right mouse click, all tasks, and issue the certificate. And what we'll see in here now is the issued certificate. And just open this up here. See that includes the requester and issued common name. Pretty sure I should see the server that issued it. But anyways, if we go and have a look here, now we can see the certificate, the chain has grown. So, probably grown is not the correct word. So, but we do have a certificate authority, a new certificate authority that's been signed off by another certificate authority. So that's what a subordinate certificate authority is all about. So we've got two certificates in this current chain. All right, so what we need to do now is got to export this out. So open up the certificate, go to details and copy to file. Click next. Now we want to copy it out with this extension. So .p7b. I do tick this box. I'm not sure if it's relevant or not, but I tick it anyway. And basically I'm just going to throw this export out to the subordinate server, and we'll call it sub, or maybe just call it mel sub ca. And so it's going to save it with that extension. Click save, next, and finish. And the export is successful. Now, again, I'm just going to go back to my my group policy manager, and I'm going to come down to here to intermediate certificate authorities or subordinate certificate authorities, and I'm going to import that certificate that we just created. I'm going to change this to all files, and I want to go to mel sub cac dollar where that file saved. It is here, and open, next. Again, might not be something that you have to do. So that's probably because I ticked the box, issue or attach all certificates. So we see both of those going here. I don't think again, it's not really a big deal. But if you want it to be a bit more clean, maybe don't tick that box, but you can go ahead and export it again if you need to. You can delete the file that you exported. Actually, I might just do that. I just want to see what happens. I'm just going to delete those. I'm going to go back to my sub CA machine. I'm going to delete this. I'm going to go back to my root CA. I'm going to go open it up. Details, copy to file. I'm going to go next. I'm not going to tick this box, and I'm going to put it in the same location, mel sub CA, save, next, and finish. Okay, back to here. Let's do a quick import. Open it up. Just open up to all files. Let's bring that in now. I just want to see now if that brings both certificates or one. Yeah, there you go. So it's just the one. Okay, so probably don't need to tick that box. We only want to see this one in here. We've already got the root certificate here. So that's all kosher. So if we come back into here, on the mel sub CA, what we can do now is enroll this, sign this certificate off in the authority. I'll just close this off, close that out, close that out as well. And I think what we need to do here is right mouse click on sub CA and install a CA certificate, which we now have. Our C drive, open, and I believe we can. You may want to check. Actually, what we need to do is actually get it up and running. Start services. I'm not going to actually change any more settings from here, but let's just have a look at the certificate itself. So this is just, we've seen this already. So 2023 to 2033. I can't believe 2033 is in 10 years' time. So that's the 10 years that we configured. So that was the validity period and unit that we set just previously through the command line on the root CA. We can have a look at some of the details of the certificate. So SHA-256, we know that. The issue of this certificate is JTA root CA. And I think if we scroll down here, CRL distribution points. So these are the things that we configured of the CDP and the AIA information. So all these details are now correct. So mel sub CA is now is a locate HTTP mel sub CA cert enroll, and here's this and the CRL. So now this certificate. So when this CRL needs to be checked, it is going to look at this location. It's going to try. It can actually access it from all these locations, but HTTP is another location that it can check it from, and it's certainly going to be able to find it based on the settings that we configured. And the same for the AIA there. So what do you want to look for the root certificate? You can find the details of that root certificate right here. So that's all well and good. That's pretty much it. I think now we're all set up. If not here, you may want to play around with the CRLs for this machine, depending on your environment. I'm just going to leave it as default. So this sub CA is going to be powered on and stay on indefinitely. So we're going to issue certificates from here, and the CRL is going to be published here every week, and every day it's going to do a delta. I mean, we probably don't need to do deltas. I'm only going to be issuing a small handful of certificates. It's not like I've got, thousands of computers that are going to be issued certificates, or thousands of users going to be issued certificates. This is just going to be a pretty basic setup. Oh, I guess the last thing to quickly do then is, so this is all configured, so there's nothing else left to do but shut down this server. We don't need this powered up anymore, so I'm going to shut it down. It's now powered off, and if we look in our VMware environment, there it is there, powered off. So we can no longer, obviously, we can't ping it, we can't do anything to it. So that root certificate is reasonably safe and can't be compromised. Like I said, I think Microsoft, if Microsoft come in and do an audit of your certificate services environment, a recommendation that they're going to make is that you actually copy off all the virtual machine files for the certificate authority to maybe a backup product, or if you're using Veeam, you could just use Veeam zip, zip it off onto a USB key, then delete this virtual machine or remove it, or actually delete it from the environment, and then store that USB key somewhere safe. I think they actually recommend in a locked safe, and only have 2 or 3 users with the ability to access it, and that's where it lives. And then when you need to bring it back out, you just have to re-import it all back into your environment, power it on. You might need to republish your CRL and copy it off to, in our case, it would be to our sub CA server, and then go through that process again, shut it down, back it up, and and file it away. So, but that's how we're going to leave it. So I'm not going to do too much here more than that. Hopefully that's kind of been semi-informative for you. Again, I'm not a certificate services expert, just know enough to get in there and get an environment up. My understanding that's the kind of the basic setup that you can sort of configure for any environment. I don't think you need to do anything else differently. But if there are any people watching this video that actually have a much better understanding of certificate services than I do, please leave any comments behind. I certainly don't mind learning a bit more from others out there that have more experience. But yeah, that's it. For now, thank you for watching. My next video is going to now move on to vSphere. I'm going to set up the vSphere certificate authority and get that signed off on this new PKI that we've configured. That's going to come up in my next video, so look out for that one. But for now, thanks very much for watching.